Hi, Cutler Knupp here. I lead Disrupt Tech, which is the venture and innovation arm of the Haskell company. Today, we're going to be talking with Roberto from Construex. Construex is a Latin American-based marketplace that's aggregating suppliers and vendors of construction materials to the Latin American market. Looking forward to the conversation today, and thank you for joining.
Thank you very much for this, Cutler. Yeah, so I am the CEO and founder of Construex, which is a B2B sustainable construction marketplace for Latin America.
You want to give a little bit of background on Construex and how you wound up actually founding the firm and what your mission is?
I am South American. I am Ecuadorian. I was born in Quito, and I am part of a construction family business. So I basically grew up in construction. I have been working at the job sites since I was 14 years old. So I spent a lot of time, 3-4 years, working really close to manual workers, really close to construction suppliers, construction managers. I studied business. I founded other companies. I moved to France. I studied strategy in France. And then after finishing my studies, I came back. So I was a purchase manager. I spent 4 years being the purchase manager of the whole company. It was a nightmare for me. It was impossible to source products. It was impossible to find suppliers. It was really impossible to try to do it properly, to do it professionally, to try to be efficient. So I quit to that job. And then I started Construex. And I bootstrapped Construex for 3 years. We started digitizing the whole space. I mainly understood if you are a construction buyer, if you are a construction developer, a contractor, it was completely necessary to be able to find construction products and construction suppliers digitally. And it was a really big pain in the whole region. So I spent a lot of time studying different models or how other companies were solving this problem around Latam, and it was a really big pain. So it was impossible to source suppliers digitally. I decided that I was going to fund Construex as a B2B SaaS-enabled construction marketplace. We started digitizing construction suppliers. For me, that was the solution, just to digitize them, just to help them become digital, upload inventories, being visible to possible buyers. And then we have been evolving in different ways. So as we're a SaaS-enabled marketplace, my vision is that I am willing to bring together the whole value chain in construction in Latin America. So I am connecting construction suppliers to a marketplace, and then bringing a lot of construction buyers, a lot of construction developers, contractors. But I am offering both sides some very specific SaaS tools to help them to save a lot of money and to generate more deals.
It's a super interesting company that you're building. So when you talk about kind of digitizing the supply chain of construction, it's already struggled with challenges of digitization and driving adoption of technologies in the space. How are you kind of seeing the adoption of the platform taking place? And you guys are taking a holistic approach to tackle most geographies across Latin America. So, I mean, how did that kind of develop for you, and what's y'all's thesis around that?
Yeah, well, I think that we're still very early in Latin America, especially in construction. And I know that it might be perceived as a very slow adoption vertical, specifically in the Latin American region. But what I think is that it's not coming from a decision from the users, but it's mainly coming for the strategy of the go-to-market of the solution, right? Because I think that startups or some tech companies, in many cases, they are not approaching like the main pain. For me, the real pain of construction SMBs in Latam, or construction suppliers SMBs in Latam, is that there are SMBs in an emerging market. Some other solutions are not helping them to solve the main pain, which is generating more revenue. Because at the end, they are SMBs. It's their family business. They have kids. They have other type of problems. So they're very focused on bringing new money to the table. So and I think that that's why our adoption has been really fast and very successful. And it's mainly because we have understood that with Construex, they can become digital. And you can see us as a kind of a Shopify. They can have fully control of their digital presence. And they were offering them a lot of very powerful SaaS tools so they can run their business. And they are using it in a very strong way. But the real motivation for them is accessing to more customers, is having access to the marketplace, right? I think that it has been a very big challenge for the last 4 years, like to landing Mexico, for example, as you mentioned. But what I'm seeing is that after traveling to Guatemala, to Mexico City, after being spend a lot of time in Ecuador, after traveling to Brazil, I have understood that the pain is the same in the whole region. It's exactly the same pain. This lack of access to data is costing a lot of money to developers, right? So we're solving problems to developers now. And I think that Construex will be in the future a very strong piece to bring together all the value chain in construction, suppliers, the marketplace itself, and very powerful solutions for construction companies.
Yeah, you hit on a pretty interesting point there too. It seems so obvious that you're solving a real pain point, but all too often I see young companies that are maybe building something interesting, something cool, they're taking a new approach, but they're not necessarily solving a true pain point. And that's why, a lot of these emerging technologies aren't necessarily sticking the way they probably should be because they're maybe just a bit off the mark and they're not really focused on that end user and what the real challenge is in the business. So, like you said, if you're hitting on that, then, the rest ideally is going to follow. So there's also, from what I understand, a lack of not necessarily trust, but maybe not knowing who these vendors and suppliers are. And so there's a lot of effort and energy that goes into that. Part of using the Construex platform, there's a vetting process that, these suppliers and vendors go through to be able to be qualified to be in the marketplace. And that's something that you're also assisting with, correct?
When I have discussions with investors or with my team, I share with them my vision. In emerging markets in Latin America, specifically in Ecuador, in Mexico, in Brazil, it's easy to find a lot of sellers and buyers willing to take advantage of the situation, right? So they are willing to have a channel that control the negotiation. So Construex is behaving as an escrow, for example. But you're also willing to have access to some data to be sure that you are making the best possible decision. And you will also need a trust broker, right? And Construex is becoming the trust broker between sellers and buyers. And I can see this in many cases in Mexico City because we are in between $300,000 tickets and the seller and the buyer are one kilometer away from each other, right? So they can easily make business between them without Construex in between. But Construex is a trust broker, and in construction, in emerging markets, you need a trust broker that helps you assuring that the transaction, the fulfillment of the order will happen correctly. It's a very big challenge, but I think that somebody needs to do it.
The other thing that I think is interesting is with the lack of aggregated digitization kind of across the space, you're essentially an insights platform through that as well, because you're able to better understand, through the transparency of who's buying, who's selling, where these materials are going, and ideally where the end source, is being delivered at the project site. So better visibility into the projects that are taking place and the, areas of economic growth and the opportunity zones too, right?
The thing is that we have already digitized 1.4 million suppliers. We have digitized more than 20 million products, and we keep digitizing the space. So I think that by 2026, we will have 3 million construction suppliers all across the region to be able to help construction companies, developers, contractors to behave in a more efficient way and to save a lot of money. So if you use Concierge, you can see in real time how much money you're saving just for having access to organized data. And the data is coming from the marketplace.
So where do you see the Latin American market? And again, I say that with great respect for how large it is and how diverse the different countries are that comprises Latin America, right? What are you seeing kind of from boots on the ground, you and your teams, around how that's changing slowly but surely?
If you have been observing the whole space, there are some amazing companies being built. But right now, I am seeing a very important opportunity in the fintech space, in the financial businesses. Because I have spent 1 year talking to fintechs in Mexico, looking to a partner that could be in a good position to lend money to my buyers. And the construction vertical, it's so complex. And there's so many data that traditional banks cannot access that it's going to be super important to be able to build an alternative score for construction developers so somebody could be in a position to lend them money. There is still so many construction companies or contractors paying their people in cash every Friday. There's so many construction companies that are successful, small and medium real estate developers building projects, but they don't have access to liquidity, to cash, but they have behind them very big projects. So they have very powerful collaterals, but nobody's willing to lend them money. And banks don't know how assess them. And if they know, they take 3-4 months. So I think that there's a very big opportunity in the fintech space connected to construction, connected to data, connected to visibility of the projects.
I mean, it's pretty interesting how many geographies you're tackling, but are you seeing from investment coming into Latin America holistically, other countries, any other interesting things you kind of have discovered along the way when you're aggregating a lot of this information and, who's doing what?
There's really big European players landing in Latin America to build infrastructure projects. So right now we are working very close to Vinci. And Vinci, they have a group named Cobra, and they are building 200 airports all across Latin America. We have spent a lot of time with Kajima. They are seen in Latin America in a very strong emerging market. And what I'm seeing too is that really big players all across the world are willing to enter in this market in many different ways. But as they don't understand the space, they need like a partner that helps them to understand how the region evolves, right? So there's a lot of international players building very big infrastructure projects. In Mexico, what is happening in Monterrey with the nearshoring opportunities. And I think that that's another very long conversation about how Mexico is going to be positioned after the tariffs related to the US. But I think that even if Mexico get some extra tariffs to be connected to the US market, I think that is going to be the best possible partner for the US in the long term. And I think that, and you can see that in Mexico, there's a lot of Chinese and Indian companies willing to become Mexican companies to get access to the US market. So there's a lot of dynamics in the construction space, mainly because how early is this region? Everything is to be built. So there's very big players willing to land in this space as a way of entering this very rich and complex and difficult market.
Totally agree. Yeah, it's super exciting time though, right? So as you, being the founder, building a startup mainly out of Latin America, I know you're worldwide, just due to some of your family, being in Europe and whatnot, and you're always traveling around. But what are some of the challenges kind of unique to building a startup in Latin America that, from your point of view? Loaded question.
We can spend 2 hours because right now we have been fundraising for the new round, and even though we have been growing amazingly, we also face challenges. But I think that mainly the biggest challenge for a person like me and a founder like me is that I was born in a 15 million people market, a very small market. And I am Ecuadorian. You have a lot of international VCs willing to invest or willing to be partners with founders from Brazil, from Mexico, from the biggest markets. And then I think that if you run a US company, the US market is so huge and so rich that you don't need to move, right? You need to be very focused in your market with your language, running just one company. But for us, we are a US company, but then we have subsidiaries in every market we're willing to land. So we have a subsidiary in Brazil, we have a subsidiary in Mexico, we have a subsidiary in Guatemala, another one in Ecuador. That brings a lot of complexity. It's like running 6 different companies inside one company, and then you need to hire people all around the continent, and then you need to make your teams efficient, and you need to deal with very different idiosyncrasies. So it's a very big challenge, and I know that it's a very big challenge, and I think that it's a big challenge because you can have access to a very big reward. Thinking about the Brazilian market, Brazil is like a continent, right? But yeah, a lot of complexities.
But you're also probably able to pull from a good, talent pools and find the right people to, kind of support the growth of those businesses locally where you are building, right? So is that the case?
Absolutely. We expanded the company by being bootstrapped mainly because of the political instability, right? So we were focused on this market. If we were facing political instability in this market, we were moving to the next market to monetize the next market. So I don't know, maybe this have changed in the US, but Latin America, it's very well known for the socio-political, economical instability. So yeah, that's a very big challenge to face. Then you have different currencies, then you have different type of taxes all across the space. But at the same time, you can build like a dream team just by picking people from Argentina, from Brazil, from Mexico. There is a lot of talent, and it's mainly because they have been facing crisis for the last 10 years, right? But they are really good people executing things. They are very creative. And I think that that's one of our advantages because we come from a very stable market and we are used to find a way to solve things, right? And so Latin American founders, Latin American teams, Latin American workers become really resourceful because of the challenges they have been facing across their lives.
Necessity definitely bears innovation. When your back's against the wall, you don't have options. You got to get scrappy and figure it out, right? So you hear a lot of
Absolutely.
investors in the U.S., and I'm sure you've heard this too. Talking about backing scrappy entrepreneurs and solid teams, and it's a people business at the end of the day, and it's very critical, especially as you're kind of establishing those kind of early set of your key employees. But it's very different here in the U.S. just due to some of the luxuries that we take for granted and that we have access to. You don't need all that at the end of the day, and I think you guys are a case of that, saying that if you're scrappy and willing to work hard and you put the right people in the right places, good things happen. Walk me through kind of a little bit about how you thought about, structuring that from where those folks are located. A lot of startups will choose to have a few technical leads in-house and then, maybe offshore, the rest of their needs accordingly. What's your kind of thoughts around how to build a good product and technical team?
Yeah, so I met Ardaman. We were part of an accelerator in San Francisco, and in the accelerator, I met my mentor, which is Daniel Collins, and he used to be the CTO of Cisco. He had a huge exit, so he's a product person, very focused on the product. And when we were part of the accelerator, we were already a bootstrap company, profitable. So we were doing good businesses, but with a very simple product. So he saw me, he invested on us, and he told me, okay, this is a good business, but you need a product. So he put me in contact with Ardaman, and he's the CTO. He's based in San Francisco. And then we started understanding the prices of building a US team, and it was insane. So we thought, okay, we are in a position to have this CTO, but we are not in a position to have US developers, right? So then we started sourcing developers in the Latin American space, and in Ecuador, in Peru, in Colombia, you find brilliant developers, but in many cases they don't speak English. So we have built an in-house team of developers from many from Ecuador, from Colombia, from Peru, and then we have a VP that it's connecting both worlds, right? Because we have the best technology coming from Ardaman's mind. But then we have this VP speaking English, speaking Spanish, and connecting both worlds. We just have an in-house team, basically Latin American developers, but the mind behind the product is Ardaman, and he's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, people are key for sure. What are some of the other unique things you've learned with, building a business in general, but maybe more specific to building a business and running a startup out of Latin America and based in Latin America? I think some insights could be valuable for, maybe others take and extract some lessons or some insights from you on that.
I think that what I have learned is that there's a lot of brilliant people building businesses all around the world. In Latin America, in the US, in Europe, a lot of brilliant minds trying to build startups. But I think that you don't need to be that brilliant, but you need to be very resilient and you need to be very persistent. So for me, like building a successful business is more about character and tenacity than intelligence, right? Of course, you need to be smart. You need to build good teams, but I think that you need to be surrounded by people with very strong spirits, so they can be able to be resilient, to be creative, and to be persistent. Because building a startup, you face so many challenges per day. Like after 1 week, you feel that you have been working for 3 months, right? And you are so happy at 10 p.m. at 10 a.m. and at 4 p.m. you're feeling that everything is becoming a mess, right? So for me, it's like about being brave, being resilient, and being persistent.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. Yeah, those are wise words for sure. Haskell having operations down, mainly Mexico City is kind of our beachhead for Latin America for 30 plus years. We definitely have firsthand experienced the opportunity, and that's why we're still there and growing our footprint
Yeah.
continuously. But also we see the challenges too. So with Mexico specifically, kind of the most recent election cycle, and obviously here in the U.S. And the tariff conversation going on. But I couldn't agree with you more about the opportunity for kind of bringing a lot of manufacturing back to near shore and the opportunities that, not just Mexico, but Latin America holistically have with, both the United States and Canada as North America as a whole, right? So it's pretty exciting stuff there. But the product itself, you're getting a lot of traction out of the larger market that would be, Mexico. You mentioned Brazil. How are those tracking from growth and from when you've launched in both of those markets? Is kind of any unique insights from that perspective?
The Mexican market is a huge market, but as all the Latin American market, it's very fragmented and it's very disorganized, right? So 80% of our revenue, 80% of our revenue is coming from Mexico. So Mexico is our main market right now. But I do believe that in the construction space, the opportunity is huge in every country. Even if you are talking about a very small country, even we have presence in Guatemala, and it's a very rich space when you're talking about construction. It's the same with Ecuador. Construction is 14% of the region GDP, and that's a 1.5 to trillion market, and it's completely offline. It's a very big challenge for an international startup to land in the Mexican market. It's a very big challenge to open a market, to start building relationships, to make the business really function. Yeah, and it's a very competitive landscape. But in construction, I think that we were lucky because as the construction vertical, it's so difficult. You don't have so many players willing to tackle the space, right? And as you understand better the dynamics, you see more and more opportunities. Right now, in Mexico, they're building the Maya train, and there is a huge investment of building infrastructure next to the Maya train, right? And this region is so early. Everything is to be built. So just by being there, you already have a huge opportunity, right? And that's why we already have offices in Mérida. From Mérida, we're serving all this region. And then you have Monterrey. We also have an office in Monterrey where you have Cemex, and you have a lot of important conversations and things happening in Monterrey, the nearshoring opportunity. And then you have Mexico City, which is bigger than both. I think that we have the best partner to land in that market because Terracotta, which is an investor, they have been building a network with real estate developers for the last 10 years. So they are already connected to every company building in Brazil. So we already have a really direct connection with them. The market is not digitized. So yeah, the opportunity is the same. I think that it's going to be mainly about us, about how we execute, but the opportunity is there, and it's a virgin space, and we are really well connected. So
we're coming up on time here, but I'd like to get, just from your lens, what you're seeing kind of taking off, innovations that you're excited about that you're seeing in the industry holistically, anything from what you feel is going to be influential, obviously outside of just the pure digitization of the space and streamlining those transactions that take place in visibility. But we're excited here about all things AI, robotics, obviously due to domestic labor shortages, things along those lines where some might not play quite as strongly, where labor is more readily available in other parts of the region in Latin America. But I mean, what else are you kind of seeing that, are innovative and exciting?
Yeah, I am seeing a very big opportunity in robotics. Manual labor in emerging markets is not as expensive as in the US, right? So I truly believe that implementing robotic solutions into the job sites are a very big opportunity. And I am seeing a lot of big construction companies willing to do it. But at the same time, I don't know if this time is going to come soon because of the price of manual labor in emerging markets, right? This is a great opportunity. And I spent 4 years at the job site. So I can see robotics working all around. And I know that they're going to be able to solve things. But at the same time, the challenge, I think that the challenge is going to be the cost. Because if you're in the US or maybe if you're in Europe where getting access to good manual labor is difficult, is not the same in Latin America. You have really great and professional, not very expensive manual labor. So even if you bring like the best possible robots into the job sites, I don't know when is going to be that time mainly because of the cost. But I am seeing a very big opportunity, and I am also seeing a lot of developers open to implement this type of solution.
Very cool. Are you seeing much in prefab or modular builds around there? Or is that a similar use case around, obviously more readily available and cheaper cost of labor?
I am not seeing a lot of this type of developments in this space. I think that they have been, most of the big players building projects around here, there are still many very focused on the traditional type of construction. So yeah, I am not seeing many players implementing this type of solutions.
Got it. Good stuff. It's been great chatting with you. I appreciate you spending a few minutes with me to kind of chop up what's the latest over there at Construex and just kind of general market update from boots on the ground. So I appreciate it. It's good to see you as always, and hopefully we'll cross in the not so distant future. So looking forward to next time we get to see each other in person.
Thank you very much, Cutler. It was my pleasure. Always good to talk to you.
Always. Take care. Salud. Cheers.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, everybody. That wraps up the discussion with Roberto from Construex. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and looking forward to future conversations and some interesting topics that we'll cover. Be sure to follow us on social media and like and subscribe. Thank you.